Miss World's speech was televised all over the civilized and not so civilized world. Muslims all over the world bristled with varying degrees of indifference. In Europe, protesters filled the streets of London, Paris, Madrid, Berlin, and many other major cities demanding her arrest. Muslim clerics conspired to rebut her story, claiming that Aisha, Muhammad's wife, had already attained puberty by the age of 9. When the Prophet consummated her marriage to him, she was for all intended purposes, an adult. This follows the Arab logic that women reach puberty around that age in the hot climates of the desert, as opposed to 12 years and older in the cooler climates of Europe. Some, not wishing to follow this line of reasoning, simply announced that Aisha was already engaged to someone else before the Prophet married her, and that was ample proof that she had already reached the age of marriage. Many of the clerics were foolishly silent when confronted with the verse in the Quran at Surat al-Talaq 65:4, which specifically allows a Muslim man to marry and sleep with a prepubescent girl. None of them could find a justifiable reason to explain away the verse. The verse speaks clearly, defining 3 types of divorced women. According to the renowned Muslim commentator, Ahmed al-Din Ismail ibn Kathir, the verse explores these 3 types of women: those who have grown old and their periods ceased, prepubescent girls, and women who have had their periods and are fertile. The first 2 types are only allowed to remarry if they observe a 3-month waiting period. The third type of women has to wait for 3 months and 10 days before entering a new marriage contract following a divorce. The verse in question is a response of the Prophet Muhammad to a question posed by one of his companions with respect to Surat al-Baqarah, Quran 2, verse 228, which states that divorced women must observe a waiting period of 3 months and 10 days before remarrying. The wait period is so that paternity of children, if any, can be determined. The question then put to the Prophet was basically, what about mature women whose periods ceased due to advanced age and those underage wives who had not yet reached the age of puberty? If these 2 types of women married and their husbands had sexual intercourse with them and then divorced them, should we also have to wait 3 months and 10 days before we can marry them? The Quran records the Prophet's answer in Surat al-Talaq 65, verse 4. The 2 types of women, who have no monthly periods due to being advanced in age or due to being underage, need not wait for 3 months and 10 days. They have only to wait 3 months. Let us see what some of the prominent interpreters of the Quran have said about this verse. Ibn Abbas narrated, "And for such of your women as despair of menstruation, because of old age, if ye doubt about their waiting period, their period of waiting shall be 3 months, upon which another man asked, O Messenger of Allah, what about the waiting period of those who do not have menstruation because they are too young, along with those who have it not, because of young age, their waiting period is 3 months. Al-Wahidi stated, when the waiting period for divorced and widowed women was mentioned in Surat al-Baqarah, Ubay ibn Ka'b said, O Messenger of Allah, some women of Medina are saying, there are other women who have not been mentioned. He asked him, and who are they? He said, those who are too young such that they have not started menstruating yet, those who are too old whose menstruation has stopped, and those who are pregnant. And so this verse, and for such of your women as despair of menstruation, was revealed. Al-Tabari mentioned, the interpretation of the verse and those of your women as have passed the age of monthly courses, for them the iddah, prescribed period, if you have doubt about their periods, is 3 months, and for those who have no courses because they are still immature, their iddah, prescribed period, is 3 months likewise. He said, the same applies to the iddah for girls who do not menstruate because they are too young, if their husbands divorce them after consummating the marriage with them. Besides the justification of the Quran in Surah 65, verse 4, Muslims also justify pedophilia on the marriage of Aisha, the underage wife of the Prophet Muhammad. The Prophet wrote the marriage contract with Aisha while she was 6 years old and consummated his marriage with her while she was 9 years old, and she remained with him for 9 years till his death. Sahih al-Bukhari, Book 62, Hadith number 89. Narrated Aisha, I used to play with the dolls in the presence of the Prophet, and my girlfriends also used to play with me. When Allah's apostle used to enter, they used to hide themselves, but the Prophet would call them to join and play with me. Sahih al-Bukhari, Book 8, Volume 7, Hadith number 151, mentioned in Fateh al-Bari, Volume 13, page 143. Despite Islam allowing men to marry prepubescent girls, you will find Muslim clerics who continue to deny the fact, locked in denial and unable to see the faults of their faith to this very day. The London Muslims in UK protested against Miss World's speech, simply because any challenges, questioning, or doubt is not tolerated in Islam. Islam requires blind faith from its followers against all intellect, reason, and logic. To use the mind is senseless and thinking too much will get you killed. For these reasons, they demanded the arrest and prosecution of the new Miss World. Not surprisingly, the secular British government and the London Police Authority rejected their demands and she was allowed to return to her country crowned beauty queen and the newly declared Miss World. She was escorted from the hotel to the international airport under heavy security. Among all the beauty contestants, Miss World was the only one who was sent home in a small business jet. Except for 2 air hostesses and the pilot, there were no other passengers on board. Miss World's itinerary was not made public, and so the Mumbai police had no idea of her arrival. The Muslims in London, however, phoned their relatives and friends in Mumbai and informed them about the departure of Miss World, and it instantly became public knowledge. Thousands of angry Muslim protesters gathered at Mumbai International Airport waiting for the blasphemous Miss World to arrive. The Mumbai police intercepted a phone conversation between India's number 1 enemy, Dawood Ibrahim, and some of his notorious Muslim terrorist associates at Bachelor. Dawood Ibrahim is the leader of the most evil Muslim terrorist group in the entire world. It is more cruel and nastier than the terrorist group of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the like. Dawood Ibrahim called for the assassination of Miss World and called in position snipers strategically placed at the international airport. He also mobilized teams to stake out her residence at Bandstand in Bandra, in case the first attempt failed. Mumbai police knew that if Dawood Ibrahim wanted to kill the Prime Minister of India or the Police Commissioner of Mumbai, no one could stop him. Indians are more afraid of Dawood Ibrahim than they are of the devil. Who was Dawood Ibrahim? He was one of India's more accomplished Muslim terrorists and gangsters. Muslim born and bred, he was known to be a natural-born killer. His name would terrify the bravest of police personalities and high-ranking officials. He was responsible for thousands of political and business assassinations in Mumbai and all of India. He murdered an uncountable number of police officers, politicians, business people, and citizens. His reign was not curbed when he went into exile in Dubai. The Dubai authorities refused to extradite him since he had committed no crimes on Dubai soil despite evidence to the contrary. From his safe haven, Dawood Ibrahim ran Muslim terrorist gangs all over India. His main headquarters were situated in the cosmopolitan city of Mumbai. Dawood Ibrahim travels freely between Dubai and Pakistan. In Pakistan he is treated as a great Muslim hero because he terrorizes and kills Hindus. His Muslim terrorist gangs also specialized in extorting money from politicians, businessmen, film stars, etc. They would call a wealthy businessman or a film star and ask him or her to pay some millions of Indian rupees or otherwise they would kill them. Sometimes, they would kidnap his or her son or daughter and ask him or her to pay or they would kill him or her. Political candidates and politicians would usually use his gangs to get rid of rivals. Mumbai police believed that if anyone's name was added to the Dawood's hit list even God would not be able to spare that person. It was a given that if Dawood Ibrahim had already decided to murder someone, the Mumbai police would not interfere. Every single police inspector knew exactly the price to pay if they came between Dawood's Muslim terrorists and their intended victims. The moment the Mumbai police knew that Miss World's name was added to the hit list, it was considered a closed case. Therefore, as soon as Mumbai police caught wind of the assassination order to kill the new Miss World, they considered her dead and gone. For them, it was just a matter of time and the entire world would soon know that Miss World was assassinated on her arrival at Mumbai Chhatrapati Shivaji International Airport by Dawood Ibrahim's terrorist gangs. Nevertheless, one new female police officer took the risk and informed the authority at the Mumbai International Airport about the assassination plot. She was one of those women who felt proud to have another Miss World from India. Following the information, the Mumbai International Airport decided to divert the private jet to the Mumbai domestic airport instead. The very same female police officer approached Miss World and her mother upon their arrival at the domestic airport and revealed the assassination plot of Dawood Ibrahim. Aphrodite Khan had never heard of the name of Dawood Ibrahim before. However, her mother began to tremble involuntarily from the mere mention of his name. She knew and understood that, when Dawood Ibrahim's gangs decided to kill someone, it was for sure to happen. Expecting to find trouble at home, she booked 2 rooms at the airport hotel. After checking in, she left Aphrodite with strict instructions to remain indoors and to keep the door locked no matter what. Rani returned in less than an hour with 2 black Islamic burqas. She asked her daughter to put on one as she donned one herself. Then, she checked out of the hotel and took her daughter and left. In front of the hotel, she stopped a taxi and told the driver to take them to the Baroda bus station. That day, around 1 million of Muslim protesters gathered in front of the international airport waiting impatiently for Miss World to make an appearance. Dawood Ibrahim had mobilized 15 gunmen throughout strategic vantage points at the airport. Every one of his gunmen was a ruthless professional not known to miss. The order to shoot on sight had already been issued. Obviously, no bullets were fired that day. Finally, the public address system announced that the private jet ferrying the new Miss World had landed at the Mumbai military air base. The authorities understood the volatility of the situation and hoped to defuse it by getting the large crowd to disperse. Long after Miss World had arrived at the domestic airport, many of the protesters suspected a ruse and continued to wait for that blasphemous woman. Eventually, moles within the Mumbai Police Department confirmed the arrival of Miss World in a private business jet at the domestic terminal, and information about the female police officer who alerted the target to the assassination attempt. By the time the snipers arrived at the Santa Cruz domestic airport, their targets had long gone. They decided to regroup and beef up reconnaissance at the bandstand house. At least she would die in the comfort of her own home. At the same time, the Muslim terrorists sent 20 of their number to deal with the female police officer who had foiled their plan. It was evening when the female officer completed her shift and returned to her neat apartment. New to the police force and a single, young Hindu, she expected her apartment to be empty since she lived alone. Entering the apartment unarmed, having surrendered her sidearm after her shift, she found Dawood Ibrahim's terrorists waiting for her, all armed with AK-47. 3 of them dragged her out by her legs from the huge apartment complex. By the time they reached the main entrance, a huge crowd of onlookers had gathered in morbid fascination. The large circle around them became even bigger when the 15 Muslim terrorists forced all the residents of the apartment complex, at the threat of death, to assemble in the courtyard. When and only when the apartment complex was vacated of its residents, did the female officer begin to understand what was in store for her. The terrorists began to strip off her clothes, by which time all the fight had been beaten out of her. They began to gang rape her in full view of her friends and neighbors. The crowd felt for the officer, but none of the residents could do anything. After 6 men had raped her, they took turns shooting her in her hands and legs, leaving her flailing on the ground naked. By the time they left, she was barely conscious and blood ran down the sidewalk in a brilliant cinnabar stream. Some of her female neighbors rushed to cover her with saris and give her some measure of dignity. The men made several emergency calls to report the atrocity and arrange for medical aid. Around the same time, it was purported that a large cargo helicopter had dropped a 1,000-pound bomb on the residence of Rani Krishna in Bandra. Casualties were high, with 30 police officers and many domestic staff killed outright or crushed by falling rubble. The following morning, the city of Mumbai awoke to breaking news that Miss World had been assassinated by Dawood Ibrahim's Muslim terrorists on the day of her homecoming. Autopsies conducted on the victims evacuated from the blast site revealed that Miss World and her mother were not among the list of casualties. The Mumbai police were forced to admit that Miss World and her entourage probably did not go home on the day of their return. Their investigations showed hotel bookings at the Intercontinental Hotel for just a few hours. There were no other leads to their location and no eyewitness reports had come in. The police could only guess that they were on the run somewhere in Mumbai. Dawood Ibrahim was furious. A mere woman had foiled him not once, but twice. It was now becoming a matter of saving face and honor. He could not afford his men thinking of him as impotent. He called in another one of his terrorist leaders at Kerala and enlisted his help. As usual, his calls were tapped and the Mumbai police came to know about this new development. As before, no action was taken. This time there was no leak and everyone stayed clear of Dawood Ibrahim's way. When the first terrorist leader of Bachelor failed to kill Miss World or discern her location, he knew he had to salvage the situation by giving his boss overseas something to smile about. He dispatched 3 of his most reliable men to the Mahatma Gandhi Children's Shelter, which Aphrodite Khan is building for Mumbai's orphans and homeless children. They arrived at night when the site was closed. All of the construction crew had gone home and they worked in relative peace planting the 5 batches of high explosives that they had brought along. The 3 night security guards were old and succumbed easily to the threats of the terrorists to kill all of their family members. The old guards were instructed to stay silent and not call the police, and to stay away from the site the next day. The site had a crew complement of 80 male workers and 90 females. The females would come in every morning with their babies strapped to their backs all day. They would put in a whole day and get off in the evening. Apart from the skilled and unskilled labor force, there were also 25 builders and 5 civil engineers working on Aphrodite Khan's noble project. It didn't help that Aphrodite provided 2 free meals to every worker, and many of them stayed around during the lunch hour. When work was in full swing, Dawood Ibrahim's terrorists remotely detonated all 5 charges that had been installed. Sitting in a small white Maruti parked across the street, those Muslim terrorists looked like they were playing a video game. At 10:30 in the morning, 5 huge blasts culminating as one rocked the building to its foundation, leaving the evil terrorists with broad smiles on their faces. There were no less than 200 workers in the building at the time of the explosion. The air was filled with arms, legs, heads, and feet. More than 40 suckling babies were torn from their mothers' grasps. Recovery crew would find assorted body parts all over the rubble of the building. Very few workers survived the attack and those that did suffered major trauma. On the day of their arrival from London, Rani Krishna and Aphrodite Khan left the Intercontinental Hotel and fled to the Baroda bus station, cloaked in their black burqas. Rani avoided travelling by plane or train because she did not want to leave any clue lying around for the Gondas. There was intensive security at the airports and they would have to show proof of identification in many points in the boarding process. Similarly, the train tickets require a name attached to them, necessitating the surrender of their identity cards or passports. In both places, a travel database of names, times, dates and locations would be updated. There are no such processes at the bus station. Tickets were dispensed and reservations made without the need to view identification documents. Soon after arriving, Rani booked bus tickets for 2 in the names of Nafisa Khan and Shabana Khan. Rani decided to take Aphrodite to Baroda. She planned to put up at her sister's house in the state of Gujarat. Her sister had a short acting stint in Bollywood, but fell in love with a very rich businessman from Baroda at a young age. Lakshmi Patel decided to trade in her career in Bollywood for a normal family life. After 10 years of blissful marriage, her husband passed away and she opted to remain single, raising their only son. Lakshmi, like her sister Rani, was very attached to India, despite her son's constant appeals that she joins him in the United States. Now Lakshmi was very comfortable in her Indian homeland, running huge profitable businesses she inherited from her husband and playing the role of a big crorepati businesswoman. Rani Krishna planned to stay for some time with her sister. She wanted to know whether the information she received from the female Hindu police officer was reliable. She knew that taking her daughter to any hotel in Mumbai or India, for that matter, would mean detection by Dawood Ibrahim's network of informers and henchmen. When she arrived at her sister's home, the guards refused them access. Lakshmi was shocked when one of her security guards told her that a couple of Muslim women were standing in front of the gate of her villa insisting to speak with her. She told the guard to summon the police if they did not agree to disperse and leave the grounds. When the guard told Rani of her employer's decision, Rani removed her veil and revealed her true identity. Lakshmi was surprised to see her sister emerging from the black burqa. She assumed that her little sister had converted to Islam. This did not sit well with her because she happened to hate Muslims with a passion. Her husband was killed at the hands of Pakistani terrorists who stormed the Taj Mahal Hotel, randomly shooting at guests. This incident scarred her for life, and from then on, she viewed them all with the greatest distrust. Looking at her sister in a burqa required all the self-control she could muster. For Lakshmi, the burqa was a sign of oppression and abuse. She believed that no rational human being should agree to be buried inside a living tomb. Rani saw the look in her eyes and spoke up immediately, explaining that the burqa was merely a disguise. Then, she explained to her the reason that led her and her daughter to dress up in such a fashion. Lakshmi had to appreciate her sister's resourcefulness and calm under pressure. She offered them a roof over their heads as long as they wished. Further discussion brought up the bombing of Rani's house and the incident surrounding the Indian police officer. The ruthlessness shown served to underline the cruelty of the Gondas. It was clear to Rani now that continuing to live in India posed an unacceptable risk for the two of them. Even her proud Indian sister advised her to leave India and settle somewhere far away, America for one. Rani was very uncomfortable with the choices in front of her. She was not ready and willing to abandon her motherland. Even Aphrodite balked at the idea of fleeing in the face of threats. She was insistent that she wanted to see the construction of the Mahatma Gandhi Children's Shelter completed. Aphrodite felt as if she had died alongside her project when she heard the news. She cried like a baby, unable to be comforted. She wept the whole day and refused all food and drink for over 24 hours. In the meantime, both Lakshmi and Rani become more and more convinced that their best option was to leave India. Both the bomb sites were ample proof that Dawood Ibrahim and his underworld network were utterly ruthless and doggedly determined, and a very dangerous combination indeed. Staying in India, she might just get careless one day and half a chance was all they needed to get even. Not being able to make her movie of the slum girl, Ifat Khan, somehow did not bother her as much as she thought it would. Dawood Ibrahim had deprived Rani and Aphrodite of their freedom and turned them into fugitives in their own country. If they opted to continue living in India, they would have to live incognito for the rest of their lives, or at least for the rest of Dawood Ibrahim's natural life. Even so, they would both have to curtail all their activities and put all their dreams on hold. The media blitz around all their public activities would have made them household names and their faces instantly recognizable. That would mean living with a burqa. Rani was forced to accept that the US would be the better route for both of them. When Aphrodite had recovered her composure after a day or so, Rani gently explained the situation they were in. She explained that they would not be able to lead normal lives in India. Aphrodite did not take the news well. She wanted to stay in Mumbai and search for her biological mother. Both her aunt and Hindu mother reminded her that staying in Mumbai under the conditions unfolding would be playing into Dawood Ibrahim's hands and making his job that much easier. When Aphrodite refused to change her stand, Lakshmi whispered to her sister and told her to pay lip service to Aphrodite and lie about her intent with the hope of bringing her back to India sometime in the near future. Rani decided to make their escape out of India via New Delhi. Mumbai, of course, was no longer an option. Both sisters decided that rail travel was the best option. They arranged for a lady's carriage and the bookings were made in Lakshmi's name and that of a friend's daughter. That day, Rani and Aphrodite assumed the role of a Muslim mother and daughter and headed to the Baroda railway station to catch the train. Their coach was already occupied by two young Indian girls, looking very much like Christian nuns. The travelers were from the south and were also dressed discreetly, covering all except their faces. It was obvious they spoke no Hindi. Other than their mother tongue of Malayalam, they were also versed in English and German. Entering the coach, mother and daughter interrupted their conversation in English. The moment the nuns noticed the burqas, they became defensive and one of them uttered a quick prayer in English, "O Lord Jesus! I pray that these two Muslim women are not terrorists sent to blow up this train and all of us innocent people on board. Help us all make it safely to our destinations, Amen." "Amen," said her companion. Abruptly, the both of them reverted to speaking Malayalam, shutting them out of the conversation. Rani Krishna understood the prayer of the Malayala nun, but did not react. She knew that the two nuns were afraid of them. Sitting down across from them, Rani smiled to them and greeted them in Hindi. One of the two nuns waved her hand indicating that they did not speak Hindi. Rani then repeated her greeting in English and explained that mother and daughter were en route to New Delhi because they were planning to immigrate to the United States of America. The two nuns felt uncomfortable when they realized that their two new traveling companions were obviously not as dumb as they had assumed. It was their experience that burqa-clad women tended to be illiterate and were not multilingual. After overcoming their pleasant surprise, the two South Indian girls tentatively engaged their travel mates in conversation. In their introduction, they introduced themselves as Annie and Nancy, both Malayala nuns on the way to New Delhi. The body language of the two somehow assured Rani perhaps they could be trusted. She thought it over and decided she could use some help once in New Delhi. She decided to reveal their identities. She introduced her daughter as Aphrodite Krishna and herself as Rani Krishna. Then, she asked the nuns directions to the YWCA in New Delhi. She said that she preferred not to take her daughter to a hotel, and preferred more secure accommodations. The moment she announced that her daughter had just been crowned the new Miss World in London, the nuns smiled condescendingly and assumed that she had lost her mind. As far as the nuns were concerned, Rani's story was now bordering on the impossible. If Rani claimed the incredible by declaring that the present Miss World was from the desert of Saudi Arabia or Somalia, the two nuns might give it a thought but not for the ghost-like human being sitting in front of them. They looked at the formless black apparition in front of them, trying to make sense of Rani's claims. It didn't even have to be Miss World. Had Rani claimed that her daughter was Miss Baroda, they would have written her off. It was to their credit that the two nuns didn't laugh their heads off. Aphrodite had remained silent all this time. She noted the quizzical looks on the nuns' faces when they were introduced. She knew that it was the discrepancy in the names that had caused their confusion. Both their names were not Muslim, so she could not be Muslim and Miss World was out of question. Since her explanations were being met by disbelief and incredulity, Rani decided to clear their doubts. She opened her daughter's clutch bag and showed them her crown of pure gold. Then, she took out a huge album full of thousands of photos of her daughter depicting her competing and winning the crown. After that, she told her daughter to unveil her face and reveal herself to her fellow travelers. When the reigning beauty queen of the world unveiled her face and smiled at her new friends, the look of disbelief was replaced by one of wonder. Never had they seen or imagined that God's creations on earth to have such harmony in form. After their tongues had been sufficiently unglued, the two Malayala nuns showered Rani with hundreds of questions. In fact, After completing grade 12, Annie and Nancy decided to become nuns because they knew that they would never find boys to marry them because of their dark complexion and their rather swarthy faces. Now that the two nuns had taken them into their confidence, Ronnie explained their urgent need for discreet accommodations. Their plight must have touched the two nuns, who after hearing their story, begged them to stay in their faith home during their short visit to New Delhi.